Everyone thought Evanescia was just another elation DPS, but once you actually understand her kit, she's way more broken than people realize. And if you build her wrong, you are losing a massive amount of damage. So in this video, I'm going to break down everything you need to know, from how she actually works to how to build her the right way. So let's get started. Now let's start with her kit highlights. Evanessia's basic attack deals physical damage based on her attack to a single target. It's actually pretty simple. Her skill hits a main target with higher scaling, then deals reduced physical damage to nearby enemies. On top of that, it generates 10 punchline points. Her ultimate deals physical damage to all enemies, followed by 5 additional hits. Each of those hits deals 120% of her attack as physical damage to random targets. Now for her talent, this is where her kit really starts to come together. Evanescia converts 20% of her crit damage into elation. Whenever she gains energy, she also gains certified banger at the same time, and it works both ways. Gaining certified banger will also give her the same amount of energy. However, each instance of this conversion is capped at 100. Once she reaches 240 energy, she consumes all of it, and Master Fox triggers a follow-up attack that hits all enemies. Each hit also restores 10 energy for Evanescia, allowing her to start building it back up again, up to 240. When Evanescia has certified banger, her abilities gain additional elation damage. Her skill gains extra physical elation damage equal to 16% against the main target. Her ultimate also gains 24% elation damage to all enemies, plus 28% additional elation damage to the random target hits by the follow-up strikes. When her ultimate deals elation damage, it calculates using certified banger at least equal to her max energy. On top of that, Master Fox follow-up attack also deals physical elation damage equal to 25% of its attack to all enemies. Her technique hits all enemies within range before entering the battle, dealing physical damage equal to 100% of her attack, and granting her 20 certified banger right away. And finally, her elation skill deals physical elation damage equal to 110% to all enemies, and generates additional 5 certified banger. Now let's talk about her traces. Her A2 gives Evanescia a 30% crit rate boost, and when there are 3 or more enemies on the field, it also increases her ultimate's hit count, and whenever a teammate with elation skill who acts before her gains certified banger, she converts 50% of that into her own. Her A4 adds extra utility to Master Fox. Whenever it attacks, it applies a vulnerability, causing enemies to take 12% increased damage taken for 3 turns. And finally, her A6 lets her convert even more certified banger. Whenever the teammate's certified banger expires, Evanescia absorbs 50% of it for herself. If you are thinking about vertically investing in Evanescia, that's probably a solid choice. Let's talk about her eidolon. Starting with E1, it increases her all-type rest span by 20%. On top of that, whenever Master Fox attacks, it will trigger Evanescia's elation skill one extra time. Her elation skill also grants additional 10 certified banger, helping her build stacks faster. E2 gives her a 36% crit damage boost. It also enhances her synergy with her traces. When she gains certified banger, she gains even more on top of it, scaling up to additional 50% to 100% of the amount gained. E4 is a straightforward damage boost, allowing her attacks to ignore 15% of the enemy's defense. And finally, E6 is where things get a lot stronger. It extends the duration of her certified banger by 1 turn and merely makes her elation damage dealt by 15%. On top of that, for every 100 certified banger she has, her elation damage merely makes by additional 2%, up to a maximum of 1000 points of certified banger taken into account. So that means her elation damage merely makes by a total of 35%. It also gives her a stronger opener. When she uses her ultimate for the first time in the battle, she immediately generates 120 energy. This effect can trigger once every 4 ultimates. If you are looking at eidolon value, I would say E2 is easily the standout here. E1 is okay, but it just does not compare to what E2 brings to the table. As for E4 and E6, I'm not going to dive too deep into them. Realistically, if you are going past E2, you're probably committing all the way. And if you are aiming for E4, you are most likely going for E6 as well. At that point, you are not really thinking about efficiency anymore, you are just picking up everything along the way. For lightcones, her best in slot obviously her signature. It gives a huge 60% crit damage to the wearer, along with a 10% boost to energy regen. On top of that, if her max energy goes above 120, every extra 10 energy increases her energy regen by additional 0.3%, up to a cap of 360 excess energy. There's also another effect where using elation skill makes enemies take 15% more damage for 2 turns. though this part does not stack with similar effects. Overall, this lightcone just gives evanescia everything she wants. The 60% crit damage is massive, especially since she converts crit damage into elation. So the more you stack, the bigger her damage gets. And since you are already building a ton of crit damage on her, this is just push it even further. On top of that, energy regen is extremely important to her playstyle. She relies heavily on spamming her ultimate, and with her high energy cost, getting more energy regen makes a big difference. With all the bonuses combined, we are getting around 20.8% energy regen, which really helps with faster ultimate cycles. And finally, the added vulnerability is just the cherry on top. All things considered, this is easily her best option. The Battle Pass Lightcone is also a really strong option for evanescia. It gives 12% crit rate, and every time you use elation skill, it's going to increase the wearer's elation by 12%, stacking up to 2 times. At S5, both of these values go up to 20%. Now the downside is that it does not give any crit damage, which is something evanescia really wants. But here is the interesting part. Her kit already gives a lot of crit rate. When you add up her traces, the base 5% crit rate and the extra from this lightcone, you are already sitting at around 70 plus crit rate without even trying. Because of that, you don't really need to chase crit rate that much in your substats, especially if you have something like Yao Guang's lightcone on the team. It basically lets you focus much more on stacking crit damage instead, which is a huge advantage. Overall, this lightcone makes building her a lot easier since it covers most of your crit rate needs. On top of that, it also gives solid elation boost that's very easy to maintain. All you have to do is use elation skills, which you'll be doing constantly anyway. That means you can stack it up quickly and keep it active for the entire fight, reaching up to 40% elation increase at max stacks. So yeah, even without crit damage, this is still one of her best options and definitely worth using. But of course, you can only obtain this by using real money, since it's a battle pass lightcone. I guess other than crit damage, this is the downside of this LC. But if you really are an F2P players, for more budget options, the 3-star lightcones like Lingering Tides and Sneering are actually very easy to get at S5. Out of the two, Sneering is probably the better pick if you are really tight to budget, since it gives a pretty solid elation boost during AHA instance, which fits nicely with the playstyle. Then you've got Shroomies Adventure, which is another great option, and the best part is it's completely free to S5 from the MOC store. So if you're looking for something reliable without spending anything, this is an easy choice. Now for a stronger option, there's Elation Brimming with Blessings, the newest 5-star lightcone from the Herta shop. Because it's a 5-star, it naturally gives higher base stats, and on top of that, its passive effects are also really solid. Overall, it's one of the best general use options you can give her. There's also a new lightcone coming in version 4.2 called Tomorrow Together. From what we know, it gives crit damage and also boosts team-wide elation after using an ultimate, which technically it fits really well with Elation MC's playstyle, but it can somehow work on evanescia too, but she won't be fully benefit from everything it offers. So I would not call it an ideal choice, but if you really don't want to use something like Shroomies Adventures, then still it's a decent fallback. Now for Relics, you actually have a lot of flexibility here. You can run a bunch of standard DPS stats, even something like Champion works, but ideally, you want sets that boost both crit damage and elation. That's why her best in slot, and my personal recommendation, is the Magical Girl set. It basically gives you everything you want from evanescia in one package. It covers all the important stats and fits perfectly with how her kit works. The 2-piece gives you crit damage, while the 4-piece provides 10% defense ignore, specifically for elation damage. On top of that, every time your team accumulates 5 punchline points, you gain extra 1% defense ignore for elation damage, stacking up to 10 times. Every 5 punchlines gives you another 1%, meaning you only need a total of 50% to max it out, and on elation teams, that's very easy to achieve. So in practice, you are getting full of 20% defense ignore from the set, which is huge. If you are aiming for the highest possible damage on evanescia, this is definitely the set that you want to run. Before we move on to the planar sets, I do want to give a quick shout out to Wave Strider and Scholar. They are not optimal choices, but if you already have them farmed, they are totally fine as starting point. You can use them early on and then transition into Magical Girl once you are ready. For planar ornaments, you actually have a lot more options. One of her best choice is available to farm right now, which is the Punk Lord Stage 0. This set gives you 8% elation, and once you hit either 40% or 80% elation in the battle for the first time, it boosts your crit damage by 20% or 32%. As you can probably tell, that lines up perfectly with evanescia's kit. Another solid option is Izumo, especially since you are usually running 2 or more elation characters in the same team anyway. It gives a nice chunk of crit rate, which makes balancing your crit ratio is a lot easier. And then there's Space Healing Station. Surprisingly, it can work because of the attack it provides, but I would not call it an ideal choice. Alright, let's move on to stats. For main stats, your priority is building a solid crit ratio. Since Evanescia already gets 30% crit rate from her kit, you can comfortably run a crit rate body. From there, you just take as much crit damage as possible. Ideally, you want to land somewhere around 70 to 80% crit rate overall, which is very achievable with crit rate body. For boots, attack percent is the way to go. Her energy gain annihilation skill procs happen multiple times throughout the fight, and they don't really depend on her speed. So instead of trying to go faster, it's better to make her hit harder and maximize those damage spikes. For the planar orb, you can choose between physical damage bonus or attack percent. Honestly, the difference is not that big, so just go with whichever one has better substats. Now for the rope, you've got two viable options. You can run attack percent if you want to push her damage higher, or you can go with energy regen. ER rope is actually pretty solid here because it not only helps her with her ultimate uptime, but also increases how often she gains certified banger stacks. So both options are good, it really depends on what you need more. If you want more damage, go attack. If you want more frequent ultimates, ER rope can be the better choice. For substats, since you are already using a crit rate body, your main focus should be stacking more on crit damage. After that, just grab attack wherever you can. She's not too demanding when it comes to substats, so as long as you are building both crit stats properly and adding some attack on top, you are in a good spot. So I think that's all from a Venetia build guide that you can start preparing from now. She will come later in the second half, but there's no harm in start preparing for her from early, right? If you find this video helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button, turn on notification as well so you won't miss out on any of my Star Rail content. I will see you guys on my next one. Bye bye!